right, Alexander. It looks like China has started to, I don't want to say retaliate, but what would be the right word? They've started to ramp things up with regards to Taiwan. And they've also started to take some action against the United States, specifically Pelosi. She's been sanctioned, her and her family. We also see the Chinese foreign minister say that they want closer cooperation with Russia, and they have also made statements that they're going to start to minimize their cooperation and contact with the United States. So we are seeing some actions being taken in the direction of the United States and the Pelosi family, to be more specific. But more importantly, we're seeing a lot of stuff happen in and around Taiwan. And when I say around Taiwan, I mean literally, figuratively. I mean, we're seeing this happen as well. So what is the situation at this moment?
Well, the first is that we have these enormous Chinese exercises, the military exercises, and the Chinese are straightforward about this. They're saying that these are dress rehearsals for a blockade of Taiwan. That's where they're going. They're actually preparing to blockade Taiwan, not immediately. These exercises would last for just 5 days, but the point is that they are launching missiles in all the seas around Taiwan, specifically targeting seas close to Taiwan's ports. They've restricted airspace, and apparently only a smaller number of aircraft, civil planes, are allowed to come in and out of Taiwan. So this is a dress rehearsal for that. It's a massive move, and it gives us some idea of the sheer scale that the Chinese military can bring to bear against Taiwan. I mean, I've not seen any estimates of the soldiers, the number of troops and machines and aircraft and fighter jets and missiles and ships and submarines and all that the Chinese have deployed. But this looks to be on an absolutely huge scale. So the Chinese have shown that they have the ability to blockade Taiwan. And the US is nervous about that. They said they don't want to see any unilateral moves that would change the situation in Taiwan. But one has to say this, given the sheer scale of this, I do wonder whether the Pentagon would really want to get into a fighting war with the Chinese over a kind of blockade. So that's one thing the Chinese have done. And by the way, we're getting more and more reports that it's having an effect within Taiwan itself. It seems more and more people in Taiwan are saying, was it really worth it hosting Pelosi to get this enormous thing happening to us? This is more than Taiwan can afford. We've got to start looking for ways to rebuild our relationship with China. So, there's that at play. But there is something else, which is that the Chinese are now, as we've discussed, they're busy reassessing their foreign policy. And we've had a number of moves, and the Chinese have now cancelled a meeting between the Chinese and Japanese foreign ministers. Japan has been pretty strong in its support of Taiwan, but they've actively taken steps, countermeasures against the United States. And I'm just going to quickly read them out. They're not many, but the Chinese Foreign Ministry has said that they're cancelling China-US theatre commanders talks. So Chinese and US military commanders in the Pacific, they're no longer going to be talking or coordinating each other. They're cancelling China-US defence policy coordination talks. So no more coordination, no more discussions between the Chinese Defence Ministry and the Pentagon. They're cancelling China-US military maritime consultative agreement. So they're no longer going to be keeping the US informed about the movement of Chinese ships, warships. They're suspending cooperation on the repatriation of illegal immigrants. They're suspending cooperation on legal assistance in criminal matters. They're suspending cooperation against transnational crimes. That means internet-related matters, IT-related matters, hacking, and all of that sort of thing. They're suspending cooperation on counter-narcotics. that means heroin, in this part of the world, and a particular dig at Biden himself. They're suspending talks on climate change. Biden has been repeatedly saying that he wants to prioritize cooperation with China on climate change issues. We know the enormous priority his administration has given to this topic. We know how important China's cooperation is. If you're going to get any kind of what Biden would call progress on this issue, I'm choosing my words carefully, by the way, as people will know. The point is they're saying no more talks on this topic, which you say is so important to you. It's less important to us. For us, the important thing is Taiwan. If you're behaving in this way towards us, then we're not going to bother to talk with you about this either. And in the meantime, as you correctly say, they're also saying we're going to ramp up our cooperation, our strategic coordination with that country which is now our major friend, our key strategic ally, which is Russia. Russia is the main winner from this affair, as we've discussed in our previous programs, and the Chinese are hardening up against both Taiwan and against the United States. They're making moves to free themselves to move more offensively in terms of military deployments in the Pacific, but they're also launching a specific blow at the Biden administration and its priorities by suspending talks on climate change.
Yeah. What do you make about the military exercises in Taiwan? Do you think there's any type of an invasion that they're planning, or do you think this is going to remain some sort of economic and potentially even like a physical blockade? I mean, how far do you think the Chinese are going to go there?
Well, I don't think they're going to launch an invasion of Taiwan now, but I am going to make a guess, which is that despite the fact that what we see being rehearsed at the moment is a naval blockade of Taiwan, I personally would be astonished if there wasn't also planning now for a physical invasion of Taiwan. I say that because if the Chinese were to mount a blockade of Taiwan, there would be enormous pressure from the US side to try to get that blockade lifted. There might even be demands of the United States that the US Navy do something to break the blockade. Now, the Chinese would probably counter that, and they're probably confident that they could counter that. But at the same time, I don't think the Chinese want to get drawn into an armed clash with the US, and they are certainly very well aware of the fact that the US Navy remains a very potent force, especially its submarine force. So I think that alongside the blockade, they would want to resolve the situation in Taiwan quickly from a military point of view, and that must mean a physical invasion. Troops being dropped airdropped on the island, landed there with amphibious warships, storming the island, pacifying it as quickly as possible. So I think that Chinese would not want a protracted military confrontation in the Pacific over Taiwan. I am sure that is what the Chinese General Staff, the Chinese military, the advice they are giving to the Standing Committee of the Politburo and to Xi Jinping.
This was such a dumb move by the Biden White House. I still to this day can't figure out what was the upside to any of this outside of this short-term media PR Pelosi stock market semiconductor trading win, which is everyone has already forgotten about. I mean, everybody has already forgotten about this. They gained nothing from this. What is the U.S.'s next move now? I mean, I look at this right now and I see China now, they've got the pitch right in front of them. There are no defenders, and they're going to be able to start really hammering away at both Taiwan and at the
Yes.
United States. When I mean hammering,
Yes.
I mean economic stuff, trade stuff, policy issues, breaking off relationships, stuff
Yes.
like that. But I mean, I see them just running towards an open goal now, and I'm trying to think what does the U.S. do? What did they gain from this? What was the purpose of all of this?
The US has gained absolutely nothing. They've destabilized the situation, and in a situation where their cards are weaker than they imagined. And I'm going to say something else. One of the most dangerous aspects of this particular affair is that the more the Chinese play their cards with these naval blockades and all the rest, and with these sanctions, the more they're going to slowly understand how strong their cards are. Just as the Russians, I get the impression that the Russians, at the outset of the war in Ukraine, underestimated the underlying strength of their own position. I think that when the major sanctions were launched against them, I think that they were quite nervous about them and had been surprised at the extent to which their economy and society have been resilient in the face of the sanctions. I think it's going to be exactly the same with the Chinese. I think the more steps they take against the United States, the more they will come to realize that the United States, if not a paper tiger, it's not a paper tiger. It's not as strong in pushing back against the Chinese as everybody, the United States, even some people in China, imagine it to be. So, for example, sanctions. If the US were to try to impose sanctions on China, China would get through and they would backfire instead badly on the US. And I think we're going to start to see that. So I think that opens the way for the Chinese to become increasingly aggressive. And because the US will be drawn into a poker game in which it will gradually discover that the Chinese have the stronger cards, and China will gradually discover that the US has the weaker cards. That's always the danger when you get yourself into poker games, when you haven't, sized up the situation properly.
This wasn't even like a poker match. I mean, I'm still. I don't understand the exercise of all of this in the benefit of America. I just don't understand. Was there any strategy? Did they talk about this, or was this just let's humiliate China? Okay, yeah, let's do it. Pelosi, you want to go there? Yeah, I want to kind of look around, and because my husband may do some stuff with Nvidia semiconductors. So yeah, I'll go. I mean,
I think there was a strategy.
Was this the extent of the?
I think there was
the conversation.
I think there was. I think there was a strategy.
Yeah.
Now I'll tell you what I think it was. I think it's difficult actually. The Biden White House, the administration, has been talking all the time for weeks, months, about creating this League of Democracies, which it was going to pitch against this League of Autocracies. It brought together, if you remember, there was that sort of conference in which all kinds of people were invited, not the Russians or the Chinese, but the Saudis were invited, all of those people. So I think they thought, we'll send Pelosi to Taiwan, she'll make a couple of waves. The Chinese won't dare to do anything really aggressive, or if they do, they'll do something stupid, like shoot a plane down or whatever. One way or the other, either the Chinese will look weak, in which case we'll be able to win over more countries to join our League of Democracies, or they will overreact by doing something really aggressive, and that will arouse feeling in the United States, and it will also create shock internationally, and that will, also attract countries around the world who become scared and worried about China. That will attract them to our League of Democracies. What's actually going to happen is that countries will look at this and they'll say to themselves what countries always say: who in the end looks like the long-term winner from this affair? Doesn't look like it's going to be the US. So let's get closer to the winner. Now, some countries like Japan are already committed to taking an anti-China position, but others like the ASEAN bloc, Vietnam especially perhaps, South Korea, they may be starting to reassess their positions as this thing gradually unfolds. So it's the sort of silly policies, sorry to use that word, but that you expect from amateurs. And remember, people like Blinken, Sullivan, all that bunch, they're ultimately amateurs. And they're up against very tough, ruthless professionals, which is what you have in Beijing. And of course, they're losing.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of talked about this as well in a video, and I said, the one thing that probably really freaked out the U.S. as they were doing this Pelosi exercise in Taiwan was when Lavrov traveled the Middle East and Africa, and everyone was lining up to take a photo with him and to meet him. Something to me said that that this administration, which is so consumed, overtaken by media, PR, optics, and all of these things, probably said, you know what, we need to do something to draw the media attention to us and to show the world that we're the big dogs, we're the hegemon, we're the ones that they want to line up to take photos with, not China, not Russia. We're the number one players, and I think something like that.
Yeah,
I
think that's also true. I think that's absolutely also true. I mean, I think that goaded them. I think Lavrov and all, he's the fact that he meets people, all these photo things, especially because Lavrov, by the way, even more than Putin, has got under their skin. I mean, read some of the sort of commentaries about him. I mean, the venom there is about Lavrov is absolutely off the scale because, of course, whenever they meet him, he just wipes the floor with them. So the fact that he's going around having all these high-profile meetings, all these photo ops with all these people around the world want to see him, talk to him, receive him, I can easily see how this really, really provoked them. So send Pelosi to Taiwan, that will take the media attention away. The Chinese will do something stupid and play into our hands and we'll come out the winners. It turned out otherwise.
As everything that the Biden White House has done.
It's I've said it before. It's the non-Midas administration. King Midas, everything he touched turned to gold. With the Biden administration, everything it touches turns to dust. That's what it does.
It's incredible. It is incredible. You have to try to be this bad. You have to really exert a lot of effort to try and be this bad as an administration.
Absolutely true.
Okay, the Duran.locals.com, Duran shop 10% off. Use the code. Good day. Take care.